Sorry, we're sorry to be late. We had a work session. We're going to have many more. So it's kind of thrown us off. I apologize. There's a lot of people here tonight. The regular scheduled board meeting with Hoover Board of Education is going to be called to order. But before we take a roll call, would you join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Would you stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to call the roll to establish the quorum, please.
Yes. Deanna Ballman. Here. Craig Kelly.
Here.
Herman Kendrick.
Here.
Amy McDonald. Here. Amy Tossman. Here.
Secretary was recorded. We do have a quorum present for this board meeting.
I would like to have Jason Gaston. Mr. Gaston, if you would come forward.
We'll do the agenda.
I'm so sorry. Y'all please forgive me. I'm playing with my microphone and completely distracted. Board members, I'd like to recommend your approval of our agenda.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy.
Thank you. Mr. Gaston, if you'd share with us our recognitions.
All right, Dr. Murphy, Board of Education, thank you for this opportunity. We've got a full house tonight, many of them here for all the good news we're about to present and go through. So first off, we'll start with proclamations. Many of you probably saw a lot of buzz last week actually for Teacher Appreciation Week, always celebrated the first full week of May. And we've got a proclamation for that I will quickly read. Whereas teachers form the backbone of not only our school systems, but our country in many respects. And whereas teachers serve peripheral roles as mentors, parents, psychologists, caretakers, counselors, and more. Whereas teachers work selflessly throughout the calendar year to ensure that students are prepared, equipped, and ready for the next phases of their lives. And whereas teachers engage in lifelong learning to better position themselves as cutting-edge professionals armed with the latest and most accurate knowledge. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Hoover Board of Education joins the U.S. Department of Education and the National Parent-Teacher Association and other organizations in giving all due credit and recognition to the teaching profession. So we had a lot of buzz on social media. I know schools had certain activities they did throughout the week. And so at this time, I would like to ask anybody who has ever been a classroom teacher to please stand. And let's recognize it. Dr. Murphy, I will present this proclamation to you.
Thank you. On behalf of all of our teachers and all of y'all, thank you.
Last week was also busy in terms of our celebration of our school nurses. We're fortunate in Hoover City Schools to have one, if not two, per campus, depending on student employee counts on those specific school campuses. So this year, May 8th, 2019, was National School Nurse Day. And before I get to the proclamation, you can see some of the stats that our lead nurse, Vicki Holden, gathered for us. And if she would come forward, and I see Charlene Hobson in the back, our former lead nurse. School nurses, will you be making your way forward as I read some of these statistics on your health room visits? And we're very fortunate to have several of you here tonight. Very quickly, up here on the screen, I know that the font is rather small. Again, starting the school year in August to close out of April, 73,468 student visits. Double word there. 49,877 medications administered. 1,100 individual student health care plans crafted, 4,900 faculty members assisted, 6,500 parent face-to-face meetings. That's not national, that's just here in the Hoover City Schools. So a lot of work on this team of about 18 or 19, I believe we've got about 14 represented tonight. And our lead nurse here, Ms. Vicki Holden, kind of facilitates this group. So let me read this proclamation. Whereas children are the future, and by investing in them today, we are ensuring our world tomorrow. And whereas families deserve to feel confident that their children will be cared for when they are at school, and whereas all students have a right to have their health needs safely met while in school settings, and whereas children today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in school, and whereas school nurses have served critical roles in improving public health and in ensuring students' academic success for more than 100 years, and whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in a position to make positive differences for students every day. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Hoover Board of Education joins the National Association of School Nurses in its commitment to recognizing and furthering the profession and contributions of school nurses across Hoover and the United States. So congratulations to our school nurse team.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Ms. Claire Jones Moore is at a family function tonight for her son, and I think in her stead we have Ms. Jennifer Van and one other representative. If those two ladies will come forward, maybe stuck in the shrub. Got it. Perfect. Okay. And so we wanted to take a moment just to recognize all of the business partners that have assisted with IS. That's the acronym we use in Hoover City Schools for instructional support. If you'll take a look at the screen here, these are the logos of the various businesses that we want to recognize. And if you will talk to us, Ms. Glenn, about that.
We want to thank the following businesses from the Hoover community, the business partners with us to allow us to provide employment training to our students at Hoover and Spain Park High School. First we have the Metro Church of God, Pastor Mike, and we have the facilities director, Judy Kern.
While they're coming up, I'd like to say it's very inspiring. I think the dry cleaners I go to, two of our Hoover students are there in the morning, they're there on Saturdays. Just these different businesses support us. It's a huge deal. To be able to work and understand before you're out of school what the responsibilities are, I think is outstanding. We sincerely want to thank these sponsors. It would be very difficult to get this done if they're using it. So.
And then we have, I'm not sure if she's here, I think there's been some traffic on 459. But Joanne Stone Cipher with Stone Salon has also supported us. And we're gonna have our student.
This is
accept hers
Dominique,
for
that's
right
who
now.
works there, so can you come take this for Miss Joanne?
And then we wanna acknowledge Becky on Moss Rock and Tacos and Tequila, Bernard and Brianna Tamborelli.
What do you tell him?
What do you got for me? What is this? What is this? Tell everybody what this is. Come on. Emily loves to go to Becky and get garlic. She thinks she said, "Oh, I smell like garlic." I said, "Yeah, you do, Em. You're great."
Can you tell him thank you?
Thank you, Miss Leonard. We
You're
wouldn't
welcome,
be able to do
sweetheart.
what we do without the training that we can provide for these students within our community, and it's so very, very much appreciated.
We love them, and we come back every year, and they do a great job, and they mean a lot to us too.
I really do.
They really do.
They do a great job.
Come on, Em. Give me a side hug.
Gotta get the hug.
I gotta get that. You get one every day.
Moving on to some of our athletic accolades you see here on the screen. Hoover High School Boys Track and Field 7A, Alabama High School Athletic Association State Outdoor Champions. They've earned this accolade several years. Coach Hind has a commitment tonight. I believe he sent one of his assistant coaches with us tonight. Sorry, tell me your name. Coach Carl Floyd. Thank you. Congratulations on that.
All right.
Perfect.
like to just thank the Hoover City Schools and the board for just the opportunity just to be able to compete and allow these young people to have an opportunity just to show their athletic ability and their heart and determination. We won the past 5 out of 7 indoor state championships, as well as 9 out of the last 11 outdoor state championships. And that's just a tribute to their hard work and determination throughout the season.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
I see Nicholas Carlisle over there, I believe, if he'd be making his way forward. So this is a fun accolade from Spain Park High School. So there is a national Latin exam, and this somewhere upwards of 22,000 students worldwide actually take it, even though they call it a national exam. Students from Australia, Belize, Canada, China, France. So out of those 22,000, only 442 students scored a perfect score. Nicholas and 2 other Spain Park students are 3 of those perfect scores. And Oliver Parker, I believe I saw him here tonight. Okay, he's here. Mr. Giangrosso is in the back representing Spain Park. And I believe your father's here. So, Mr. Parker, if you would come forward, I'd like to get a photo with you and Nicholas, and then we will move on to the next one. Very big honor. Again, only 422 worldwide, 3 perfect scores. 3 of them at Spain Park. Alex Thomason, RF Bumpus Middle School, if you'd be making his way forward. Congratulations. And he was in Montgomery a few weeks ago, came in 2nd in the state for the Governor's App Challenge. And so the app is called Control Freak. And great app for middle school level, right? And so I believe it has been posted to the Bumpus website, so you can kind of sample it and see what it does. And I believe there's a video up that kind of shows you, I think this was the Renaissance Hotel Montgomery, where you had to present to some big wigs. And so we're very proud of you for coming in 2nd in the state. And are your parents here tonight?
It's principal.
It's Principal. Dr. Maddox is here. Would you come forward for a photo as well? And Alex, will you tell us a little bit about the app?
Control Freak is a simple maze game that helps you learn how to get precise control over your character, that then you can take the skills you learn in it and apply it to popular games such as Minecraft and Fortnite that a lot of people play.
Junior Achievement of Alabama Business Plan Challenge. No, Dr. Autumn Jeter was able to represent Hoover City Schools downtown at Regions a couple weeks ago to see these business plans presented. So both of our high schools were there, along with here at Trussville High School. We pretty much swept the top 10. We had 1st place and 2nd, 3rd. I think we skipped 6th or something. But with some of those students, please come forward. And I think Lisa Smith is here representing Hoover High School's Business and Entrepreneurial Academy. So let's give them a hand as they come forward.
My students had work conflicts. Okay. Yeah, I'm afraid that my students couldn't be here tonight to accept any recognition, so I'm here on their behalf. And I guess on Spain Park's behalf as well. But yeah, I was really excited that when we entered the Business Plan Challenge, it's sponsored by Junior Achievement of Alabama, and it's a scholarship competition. And our students develop business plans and are able to pitch them every year, and they do really, really good jobs and win lots of scholarship money. So we're really proud of them.
Thank you. It does seem like there was one Spain Park student from the Business Plan Challenge that was going to be in attendance. Is he or she here? Okay, not. We'll move on. Congratulations. This young lady learned last minute was not able to be with us. She won the Congressional Art Competition. Congress is in Congressman Gary Palmer. And you can see she drew a picture of her brother who's right there. So take a look at that. That's pretty cool. Spain Park High School Art Department. And in that same vein, we've got art instructor Cindy Childers with us tonight. If she'd be making her way forward, I believe we've got Tandone Hen, Lauren Bistritz, Sapir Blaine with us tonight. If they'll be coming forward. So this is really unique. The one in the top left corner with the ribbon is on display at the state capitol. So this was a state competition and a lot of success, again, from Spain Park High School. On that, so Ms. Childers will give us a very brief rundown on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to honor our visual arts students. Spain Park High School had 4 honors this year. They give out 14 ribbons among 10 high schools in our district, and so Spain Park was awarded 4 of those. One of those students, Naomi Gonzalez, the top one on the left, her work went on to the Capitol, and she won best piece of the 10 schools. So we're very proud of our art students. And let's see, we did computer imaging, and we had runner-up for computer imaging. We had runner-up for printmaking and runner-up for painting. And we have Lauren Bistritz here, who had runner-up for the state for digital imaging.
Her father's here, and I'll haphazardly invite parents up if you'd like to come forward. So,
This is actually for our student.
okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes.
I was down, I think, seeing one, Trace Cross's choir sing at the Rotunda about a month or 6 weeks ago. And that art exhibit, I think, was on the 3rd floor of the main capitol. I didn't go in person today. It's just amazing to see what the students have done. They're displaced from all over the state, so.
Right.
I stayed a while.
Absolutely. I'm very proud of that accomplishment for sure. And as Ms. Childers pointed out, Jean Ferrero is also one of the instructors for this genre of art. Hoover High School Scholars Bowl team, I just got an email about an hour ago. Coach Joshua Rutsky was unable to make it. And I believe his proxy is Coach Kane. Is he here tonight? Coach Kane? All right, any Scholars Bowl team members? Okay, please come forward. So very, very quickly, you see on the screen there, back-to-back state champions. This makes the Hoover High School Scholars Bowl team their 5th state title in the past decade. And it is a crowning achievement for Coach Joshua Rutsky, who is bowing out after 10 years, and Coach Kane will take over for him this fall. So we're very proud of you guys, how you represent us on the local, regional, and national stage. So let me grab a photo real quick.
2 things too. As y'all can see there, that is our varsity team that encompasses 9th through 12th grade. However, me and Kenny here, we won the JV state championship also, along with some other members of our school, 9th through 10th grade. So that's school ends, after exams ends, we are going to Atlanta for the high school national championship tournament. Where more than 300 high school teams from all around the country come and participate, and we're gonna beat them all.
Any of their parents here with them tonight? Would you like to come forward?
Everyone come.
Congratulations. Is Dr. Alice Turney from River Chase or Miss Betty Daigle with us tonight, or anybody representing the Alabama PALS organization? Dr. Turney, if you'd be coming forward. Perfect. So this also represents and matriculates up to a state level with the Governor's Award Luncheon, November 13th. And we have two students here who she'll tell us about.
I'm so excited to recognize Faison Iqbal and Adriana Brett, who were poster award winners for this contest. They were recognized with the City Council earlier this year, and if you two would come down, Adriana, Faison.
And are their parents here with us tonight? And if so, would you step forward? Wonderful. Congratulations. And again, big stuff. You've already heard City Council, and I think we've got City Councilman Mike Shaw with us tonight. Yes, in the back, so thank you for being here. And so governors and from City Council up to the governors in Montgomery later this year. Big stuff. Berry Middle School robotics coding team. This was also a statewide competition held at the University of Alabama. Is Miss Mangina here tonight? I know Dr. Robbins. Okay, Miss Mangina, if you would come forward. No? All right, okay, and the students, of course. And Dr. Robbins is in the back, and if any of his administrative team is here who would care to come forward. This was a big deal. You can see right here on the screen, 8th grade boys team first in the state. You see their trophy here. 6th grade girls team third in the state. So big, big deal here. And so we want to congratulate them tonight. Parents, please. Congratulations. Okay, this one right here has a personal connection. So earlier in the school year at the start, I reached out to our high school administrators to see if we had any students who were especially savvy when it comes to social media, and two names floated to the top: senior Aaron Cannon from Hoover High School and sophomore Avery Powell. So you've got screenshots right here. Aaron has helped manage the Hoover High School Twitter account. Avery has helped manage the district Instagram account. And I will say the Hoover High Twitter account was dormant for a while and was hovering around 1,400 followers. Aaron has successfully leveraged it up to about 2,200 followers. So if you want something done, give it to a high schooler. And Avery, who's at Spain Park, has helped me kind of organically grow up to about 700 followers on Instagram. So you see at the bottom there, I totaled this afternoon. So among Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for the district, we're getting close to 17,700 followers. And so the audiences, as we know, are segmented these days in terms of where people are. So we got to get there. And Erin is with us tonight, if she would come forward, and her parents as well. Congratulations. All right, getting toward the end here, Emma Ruth Cooper, great shape winner, Deer Valley Elementary School. I saw the assistant principal, Ms. Nicole Stokes, who helped facilitate that at Deer Valley. I see Dr. Wayne Richardson in the back. If those two will come forward, and Emma Ruth, if you were here, okay. So best handshake at Deer Valley is what I understand. Let's see how it is. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Just here. Any family members? And as they come forward, this was started at Deer Valley locally in terms of the confidence building, and there's a better way to say that, but when students participate and it's a competition, and we figure out who can present themselves best in front of their peers. Great. Congratulations. Thank you.
I'd like to just exercise one point of privilege. Emma Ruth, and to all those students, congratulations. Emma Ruth's grandmother is with us this evening, is a former Assistant State Superintendent, Dr. Ruth Ash. And as I shared with her a few moments ago, there are those few people who come along in your life who so powerfully impact you. And Dr. Ruth Ash is one of those people for me. So we're proud of her grandchild, but it's most appropriate for us to acknowledge you too. Thank you so much.
Ms. Amy Williams took this concept from Deer Valley up the hill to Bluff Park, and they held a great shake contest. And Dr. Murphy, myself, and others were panelists on this thing, along with news anchors from around town and an expert panel. So Virginia Mann emerged as the winner. If she is here, and see Ms. Williams in the back, if you guys would come forward. And any other representatives from Bluff Park and the family. Congratulations. And Julian Smith in our technology department, if he would come forward, he had a very high distinction out west in the Rocky Mountains a few weeks ago. So he was part of the MSISAC conference in Denver. This was an information sharing and analysis center It's a national think tank, so he was with peers not only from K-12, but other industries ranging from banking to insurance, any kind of tech intersection there. But the big point to remember, as you see there in yellow, he was one of fewer than 10 K-12 representatives from across the U.S. at the table, where hundreds were represented there in Denver. So we're very proud of you, Julie.
My surface that, go ahead, Justin. My surface that broke, or at least my group emails weren't working, so I called Julie and went out to the school, and I mean, that fast. I know that's elementary, but for me it was a big deal.
At this point in the program, I will turn it over to our Director of Human Resources, Ms. Mary Bill, and her team to recognize our retirees.
I'm close to retirement age, so I'll have to put on my glasses so I can see. But retirement is a very special time in an educator's life, and we're so proud to recognize several that we have had through Hoover City Schools. Whether you're teaching students, serving food in the lunchroom, cleaning the floors, every person in our school buildings and our central office provides so many services to our students, and we're so happy. This year we have a total of 23 retirees that have a minimum of 25 years of service. We have 19 certified employees and 4 non-certified support employees in this number. The combined years of service for these individuals totals 794 years. That demonstrates an amazing commitment to education. Approximately 10 retirees responded they will be attending tonight, so we're going to start with those individuals. And when I recognize you, if you will come, and we have a gift and a certificate to give you, and you can shake the hands of the board members. If those of you will stay standing, and then if there are any retirees that were able to come that did not respond, we will stop to recognize you as well. First, Lydia Bartle, teacher and math coach, total years of service, 35. Margie Keeney, teacher, total years of service, 25.
Thank you so much. Good luck to you, okay?
Jim Brown, teacher and coach, total years of service, 30. Andy Emery, transportation, 25 years of service. Julie Feltham, principal, total years of service, 38. Melanie Freeman, teacher, total years of service, 38. Most of you don't know this person. Don Hewlin, principal. Don was with Hoover City Schools for 10 years, but in all of his years of education, 32. Kara McLaughlin, teacher, total years of service, 28. Jana Steele, teacher, total years of service, 28. Christy Wilson,
Thank you.
Teachers, total years of service, 31. And do we have any other retirees that were able to attend
Thank you
tonight?
so much. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service. One other special group to recognize is the family members of all these educators, because as you know, they spend countless hours. It's not a 7 to 3 or an 8 to 4 type of job. They work evenings, weekends, and so any family members of the retirees, would you please stand?
You gotta stand across the front here.
That's okay. No, this is back to you. Sit down.
Here we go. 1, 3, 1, 2, 3. Got it. Good job. Did we miss any recognitions tonight? All right. The Dr. Murphy Board, that concludes our recognitions. Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. 45 great minutes of celebrating the terrific things in the school district, so thank everybody.
It's amazing. I think all the board will share same thoughts. This is the fun part of what we do. This is very, very enjoyable. It just keeps little further business. Do we have any public comment tonight?
Yes, board members, let's begin with action items. You have before you presented both minutes for our April 9 board meeting and also our special call board meeting for April 24th. And I'd like to recommend your consent on both of those minutes, please.
There's a consent motion. Do I hear a motion to accept these two? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Accept.
Next, you have the personnel report before you, and I would request your approval of that. And again, 794 years is walking out the door on us, and we celebrate those folks, wish them well, but you have other items on the personnel report, and I recommend your approval.
Board, you got a copy of personnel report you had, to have a motion to accept as stated. Second.
Second.
Any questions about the personnel report? The board, from the public? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Accepted.
Next, we have our business actions, and I'll ask your approval after Michelle speaks to us on our monthly financial statement for March FY19 for cash disbursements for March for $5,222,738, and then for our payroll April 29, $7,893,319.03.
Board, please find attached the summary and general purpose financial statements for the month ended March 31, 2019, based on reconciled bank statements for fiscal year 2019. For the 2019 budget, 76.73% of budget revenue has been received for the month ended March 31, 2019. Tax receipts have increased compared to the prior period in FY 2018. Ad valorem taxes are collected at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then collections decline for the remainder of the year. Therefore, we will only see small collections for the remainder of the year. The results of operations represent 6 months of activity. Accordingly, approximately 50% of the budget would be anticipated to have been spent for recurring expenditures. General fund expenditures are 47.31% of budget. For the 6 months of activity, the current month's reserve is at 10.33, but will decline throughout the remainder of the year due to the decline of the ad valorem tax collections. 38% of the expenditures for March included capital payments for RC3. 14% of those expenditures were for desktops at RC3 and elementary refresh. Special revenue fund expenditures for 6 months of activity were $11.1 million, or 59.85% of the budget. Special revenue income is collected a month in arrears from federal funds. is higher than 50%. So I just want to point out, we didn't get to talk about that earlier, that it's really timing. So federal funds you try to spend during the school year. So we'll spend more of that up front and it's not during the summer months.
Request your approval on monthly financial, cash disbursements, and payroll.
Got a motion to accept business actions as stated by Ms. McKay.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We say, today, we spent the time, Ms. McKay was here, we discussed other things during the work session. So the board's looking forward to invite different department heads to come and explain to your board and the public. You're certainly invited to be there for us to learn more and be able to intelligently make decisions. So we appreciate the brief today. So rather than this quick presentation, which we study, it's already helped me a little bit to understand more. So thank you.
Next, board members, we have bid 19-07. This is our summer painting bid. We set aside $200,000 for the purposes of purchase of paint and also for painting in our schools. You did have a presentation during our work session, so I'll not deliberate that, but I do want to recommend your approval of the summer painting bid.
Do you have a motion to accept the summer painting bid?
Mr. Jerry,
Yes,
did
sir.
we vote
We didn't.
on the budget for the month, the budget, did we vote
Did we
financially?
not vote?
I mean, we do.
Well, let's just back up and do it clean
Yeah,
if we're not certain.
Thank you for pointing that out. I
Okay,
don't- I
sorry
don't
about
remember.
that.
Okay, we'll back up, no, it's not fine. We'll back up and vote on presentation financials from Ms. McKay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for the correction. We'll go look at the tape.
I think I jumped ahead on this. And requesting the summer painting, we took care of that. The next item we have is F, the Restorette supplement for 2018-19 in the amount of, okay, well, I'm just all messed up from beginning to end. I'm gonna so move it. Okay.
So we moved, we have a second on the painting bid. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Painting is accepted. I want to say one thing too. We explained to the board during the work session, this was a performance-based bid, which was new to me. It meant we had X amount of money to spend. Went to the schools with the needs to them, to ask them what they needed as far as painting projects. The bidders actually were told, here's all the money we have to spend, here's your allowance. And they bid based on how much of the work they could complete. So I think it's an excellent way to actually spend our money in a better way than in some cases just putting a bid out there. So thanks to the staff, Mr. Moog, for seeing that through.
I believe we're on F now, Restorette. Supplement for an individual who was a sponsor for that and would recommend your approval of this supplement.
Okay, well, we also talked about that in the session. Do I have a motion to accept the supplement on the Restorette?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. Thank you, Dr. Moog.
I'd like to ask Tim Westhoven if he would come up and share with us. We have a request for easement from Alabama Power, and Tracy Hobson is at his granddaughter's graduation, I understand. And so, Tim, thank you so much for coming in and helping us walk through this.
You're very welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with the board, as always. Needs to be rotated just a little bit, but this is a diagram. The city of Hoover is working with Alabama Power to try to install 6 street lights out on Champions Way, which is that new road that we constructed to connect Stadium Trace Parkway over to the high school ring road. And as you can see on this diagram, 2 of those lights might potentially reside on school board property, as the road kind of cuts across the little corner of property owned by the schools. And so out of an abundance of caution, Alabama Power is wanting to acquire an easement around those 2 poles from the school board. They've already acquired an easement from us for the other 4 that are installed. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Top button. So this is always difficult. This is Stadium Trace Parkway right there. We got the new Champions Way that comes down here and drops down and goes over to the high school ring road right there. You've got 6 proposed street lights that are going in right there. This is school board property right They're kind of highlighted in black. And you can see the little tip of your property right there. Two of those street lights potentially could reside on your property without actually getting a survey of where those lights are going to be located and surveying in your property line, which both of those are pretty expensive opportunities for us. We're just asking for an easement for Alabama Power. It'd be 5 feet either side of those streetlights.
5 feet.
5 feet either side, a total of 10 feet, I believe, if I'm not
So they
mistaken.
can move to 10 feet. I don't know if it's either side.
Well, no, they really, the way the easement is described is when you set those poles, it'll be 5 feet either side of wherever those poles are set.
Let's try to get a motion second, then we can discuss it. Got a motion to accept the proposal for the easement on Champions Way? Second? Second, okay. Any questions from the board?
I just have, one, have our lawyers looked at this deed, or did our lawyers prepare this deed?
I have not, but I would assume, I haven't looked at it. I would assume it's a standard Alabama Power Company.
It is a standard Alabama Power Company easement.
Same ones that we've sent through previous, very standard language.
And does it limit their use of the easement, meaning that if they want to do something different with this 5 to 10 feet, that they would have to come through us to do that?
I would assume it's a utility easement.
I believe it's a little broader than, yeah, exactly. I don't know that it limits it to just streetlights, but it would be for Alabama Power purposes. It's the exact same easement that you have already granted for their lines that run along Champions Way right there.
Okay, thank you.
So what's the total amount of land we're talking about?
How many linear feet?
Oh,
And it's just 2 of the lights.
that's correct. The other 4 are on our property. So basically, it just all depended on how the road.
And is it the first 2?
The first 2 on that north end, or really it's kind of the west end there. As the photograph is rotated.
Board, I went out with Mr. Hobson with Tracy and got in the golf cart, and we drove out and looked. This is an improvement to our property as well as the city. This lighting will continue on from basically the left field of the Met, if you want to look at it. Goes up the hill, we got a school sitting right up there above these lights. So this is good for safety lighting for anyone out there, whether it be the city or us. And this board is very, very conservative with property. So I think this is an addition. It is an easement. It's not eating a property, even though that is an incumbent. So I think it's a good thing we're getting this done.
Well, and I certainly appreciate that, and I appreciate you pointing that out. If you see this lower parking lot of the Met is already lit, and then these new parking lots that have been constructed, and this segment of roadway is lit. The segment in between those 2 was unlit, and it was just kind of an oversight on our part.
Okay. All in favor to accept the easement as offered?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Next, board members, we have before you the proposed board meeting schedule. And I would share with you that there are a couple of changes in our typical routine. As you know, we generally meet the second Tuesday of every month. We were aware of a couple of conflicts, so we've already found remedy to those. Hopefully it'll work in your schedules. But I would like to invite you to take just a moment, look at your calendar, look at the proposed dates. We can always modify going forward, but if you already know of a conflict, let's see if we can tweak now.
The 11th is a bad day for me.
11th is a bad day
Of
for you.
July.
Moving to that Thursday, okay?
June, I
Of
think.
July.
Aren't we? We're gonna talk about that. But now I'm looking actually at.
Are they all? Okay, I do think this was supposed to be June and not July.
The one on here is July 11th.
Yes.
Yes, the one that
And
was
July the
switched.
11th is
We're just.
Tuesday,
June
July,
is
June the 11th.
My calendar's fine with me. We have a couple of reasons too. A couple of board members might not be
This is
here.
supposed to be June.
Ms. McKay's got some financials that will be ready, not your fault, but just information's not to you yet. So the 11th, if it works for the board, probably good.
Okay, let's, can I be sure where we are, cause I'm a little confused?
Yeah.
So June the 11th, we're all good?
Yes.
No,
No, we're not talking, okay. What is presented in front of us starts in July. The June board meeting needs to be discussed, but we can talk about that towards the end of this meeting. This, is just looking forward to what's our next year considered our next year. So we're looking at, and we did switch, which would have been July 9th to July 11th. That was one change, and then the other change was in October. But also, since we're talking about this, going all the way to June 9th, 2020, we may have the same situation come up that's coming up right now this June with AASB and the conference, and you know, a few of us may not be available on that June 9th. So we might wanna go ahead and look at that now, or we can wait.
did we take a look at AASB for 2020 to see if any, did we look at any of those conferences for conflicts, or
We don't have those schedules yet.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's gonna fall on that week or it could fall the next week.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
So we could just wait on that one if we have a conflict later.
I know the 15th of October, I'm scheduled to be in trial that week. So those are two things I know that I'll be out.
I'll be out of the state on the 8th.
And we can always amend this moving forward. So if we wanna just get this and go ahead and vote it in, we can always vote to change it if we need to moving forward, if conflicts come in. That would be my suggestion.
pleasure of the board?
Okay, so what we're looking at here, this is what we're gonna vote. Okay, we're gonna deal with the other one. Okay, do I have a motion to accept the regular board meeting dates as listed July 2019 to June 20?
So
Second?
Okay, second, we can discuss, I'm still confused, what, we're gonna just vote on this and pass it, and then we're gonna change it?
no, I'm just saying this can stay. I'm just saying anything
Yeah.
could come up.
Right,
And I mean, we've had to change a couple of board meetings throughout this past year as well, so as things come up, if we don't have a quorum, then we would have to change the board meeting.
Right.
Moving forward.
One person's out.
Right.
Yeah, one person's
Okay, I'm
out.
sorry, I just,
I mean, it's hard to accommodate everyone, but we wanna try.
Good.
Mr. Kendrick,
I do
neither
know-
July 11 or October 15, those changes don't work in your schedule.
They do not, but again,
July 11th.
if 4 people are here, that's.
July the 11th, you're not either.
Including when I'm gone on that topic, if we have 4 people here, we keep on. Okay, so we have a second?
Do you wanna, if we've already got 2 that are out in July, do you wanna go ahead and look at?
that's what I was thinking, if we know the July date is bad, let's go ahead and come up with another date for that and amend it.
Right. Okay, so. What about looking at the week after that?
23rd?
18.
The 16th?
16th. Tuesday.
18th?
I can make that
Hey,
work.
never
That's
mind.
mega conference, but that's not a
Never mind,
problem.
I can do the 11th, not the 8th. I'm not saying anything else.
Alright, let's just,
If it's at the board's pleasure and we move it to the 16th.
You going for the 16th? No, that's okay.
16's fine with me.
Sure, great, do that. It's okay.
Sure.
All good.
So rather than July the 11th, July 16th, okay? amendment there then.
And a lot of the schedule is for employees, it's for the press, it's for everybody else that needs to get ready. It's easy for 5 of us to jungle hours around, so trying to be respectful of everybody, not just us. So, thanks for being patient. Okay. I'll do this already in a second. I have a motion to accept as just discussed. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. We're good on what we got so far.
And we can make edits, cause I just got a text, I have a conflict, but anyway, let's just be sure, okay? If we could just move forward and then we'll call, if that's okay. Okay, next we have, textbook. And, appreciate the work that Dr. Jeter and her team has done as it relates to the textbook information. You have that information, before you board members. Most of the textbooks, or the textbooks this round, are about career tech. And most of the textbooks that's listed here for you are RC3 books. And you might also, we have a total of that amount for you. We're requesting to spend $160,577.56 is the total request. For foundation textbook budget from the state, we get $927,553, and of course there are other resources we'll buy that will consume that money, no doubt. But at this point, the request is for textbooks at a little over $160,500. That's my request of you.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the textbook list as presented by the superintendent. Second?
The question,
Yes,
second,
next time.
good
That's
question.
good, okay, second, got a question.
Do any of the student fees that come in that the parents pay and as they register their kids for school cover the $160,577? I mean, do we recoup any of that for that?
No, that's from the state and we purchase their textbooks. Now, fees may cover other supplemental things possibly, but not the actual textbook.
Just I was always
Good
curious.
point. Thank you for that question. That's a good point.
And I believe the legislature's got a proposed increase in tax
I
rates.
do.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's accepted. Thanks for the hard work of the staff for going through this.
Next item, board members, you have on the agenda is CSFO's contract. I defer to you.
Okay, we'll certainly have a chance for questions if we get a motion second, but you remember the last meeting, we approved the new CSFO contract, or, I'm sorry, Ms. McKay to be our CSFO, subject to contract negotiations, or to make sure both parties understood where we were. So at this point, I'd like to see if I can get a nomination to accept the contract as written for Ms. Michelle McKay's terms of contract.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for not knowing the Robert Rules of Order as well as I should, but this is the first day I've actually seen the contract. We do have a special call board meeting on the 22nd. I would like to have an opportunity to read the contract, ask questions about the contract, and then maybe ask the board to vote to look at the contract at our special call board meeting May 22nd.
Okay, I've got a request for a motion on accepting the terms of this contract. Do I have a motion to accept it?
So moved.
Got a second? Any questions by the board? We can take time, we can read and talk.
Okay, my position. I'd rather take some time and read it, just as the first time I've seen it, and come back on the 22nd and take care of it, but I'm just one vote.
Board, you hear Mr. Kendrick's suggestion. I mean, I don't think anything's gonna change. If you have any comments on this, if not, we'll vote. All in favor? Call the roll, please.
Deanna Bowman.
Aye.
Craig Kelly.
Aye.
Frank Kendrick.
No.
Amy Madonna.
Aye.
Amy Tosin.
Aye.
We're voting on the contract.
Yes, we're voting on the terms of the contract, which is made public after the meeting, it was supplied. In fairness, Mr. Kendrick, it was given out. We were tasked, Ms. Madonna and I, working out the terms of the contract, which we did, and this is where it is now. So I appreciate the concerns of my fellow board member, but we have approved it, and congratulations.
Thank you. Next, board members, we have new business and some reports that we'd like to provide. And first up, we have our FY18 financial review with our auditors.
Yes, Board, I'd just like to introduce you to two of our auditors in Carl Riggs. We have Jason Hart with us, and we have Andrew Waits.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Waits, and as she said, this is Jason. We're with Carl Riggs and Ingram, and we're here to talk about the FY18 audit. I believe you should have a copy, something that looks similar to this, through a reminder, and we're going to go over some of the highlights of the audit. We're going to turn to page 1. First off, I'd like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to serve the board. As you might imagine, an audit is pretty disruptive to the schedule, and Michelle and all the rest of the finance team were very helpful in getting all the information that we needed. So, page 1 is our audit report. So, this is the only thing in this whole packet that actually belongs to us. The rest of it is your financial statements. So, it is actually an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. Is what you would want, definitely expect. It says that financial statements are materially correct in our opinion. So, we didn't have any material adjustments that we needed to propose in order to correct financial statements for errors or anything like that. To kind of go over a few of the highlights from the year. First of all, as you know, there's 2 sets of financial statements. The first set is the government-wide financial statements. That includes all your property, plant, equipment, long-term debt, pension liability, OPEB liability, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit. And then there's the fund financial statements, which is probably something that you're used to hearing about a little bit more regularly. You're about the general fund, you're talking about the budget, that's what you're kind of focusing on, is the fund financial statements. So if you turn to page 5, they're all kind of 2-page statements that should pull open. And this is the statement of net position. So as I was saying, this is the government-wide financial balance sheet, essentially, that's going to include very similar items as you would for a normal company if you'd be looking at the financial statements. It's got land, buildings, long-term debt, pension liability, and OPEB liability, which is actually a new item this year. As you might remember, back in 2015, there was a net pension liability. GASB put out the pronouncement that required all the governments in the whole United States to put on a liability for their pension liability. So now we have that same thing for OPEB, which is health insurance benefits for retirees. It's a very similar number. If you look in up the middle of the page on page 5, it's called net OPEB liability, $101,419,000. That's obviously a very large number. It's not something that you're going to be writing a check for tomorrow, obviously, just like if it's going to be something that's paid over time. It's actually an actuarially determined amount. They determine the total OPEB liability. Essentially what they do is they look at all the demographics of all the employees, and they say, okay, based on that, this is how long we expect them to live, and then they calculate health insurance and how much that's supposed to increase over time. It's a lot of computations that go into it, and they come up with this number that says Hoover Board of Education at 9/30/18 is going to owe $101 million. Now that sounds like a really large number, but similarly to the net pension liability, a lot of that is actually being paid by the state through the Hoover Board. So the Education Trust Fund is actually passing through funds for the employees, and then the board is actually paying the liability. So it's not really something that's coming out of your pocket directly. Now there are local teacher units that amount is actually coming. So whatever, I believe that number somewhere 160 to 200 local teacher units that the Hoover Board has. So in that case, those are coming out of local funds that the board has from other sources other than the state. If you would keep going over to a few pages over to page 6, this is the government-wide statement of activities. So this is the income statement, more or less, for the government-wide activities. So it's kind of a little bit upside down and backwards. So you would normally think of an income statement starting off with your revenues and listing your expenses and coming down to net income. But here on the left side, you've got actually your expenses for each type of activity. So you have your instructional services, instructional support, operation, maintenance, auxiliary services, and so forth. Now, if you go over to the right side of the page, it's got columns for different types of revenues that are specifically attributed to providing those activities. So, for example, you have charge for services, operating, and grants on the same line as instructional services. Most of those are federal grants, state grants, stuff like that that are specifically for providing the services, instructional services. Or if you had something for transportation, that would be down in auxiliary services. So it really kind of looks weird, but it actually kind of makes a lot of sense when you kind of look across, because here in the far right column under net expenses, that's really showing you the net cost of providing those services with the revenues that you have specifically to provide those. So if you come down to the bottom, well, you'll see, like for instructional services, for example, that's negative $49 million. Obviously, you don't have enough revenues from the state and federal grants that are specifically for that, so there's a need for property taxes, sales taxes, and appropriations from the city. Those are just general revenues that can be used for a lot of different things, not specifically intended for one specific purpose. So that's when you come down and you'll see under the general revenues, property tax, local sales tax, total $87 million. After that, the net change was actually an increase of $4.2 million. So that's where you went positive. Up at the top, before all these other revenues, you were negative $83 million. That's a very common thing. That's not unusual by any means, or specific to the board. So pretty much any governmental financial statements you'll look at are kind of structured like that. Everybody needs more revenues, general revenues, in order to cover their expenses. Flipping over a few more pages, we're going to jump to page 9. Just kind of wanted to go over a few brief highlights of the general fund financial statements and kind of compare those to last year for you. The revenues stayed approximately the same, except for last year there was some one-time payments from the Jefferson County. I think it was around $8 or $9 million where they gave a lot of the boards in the county additional funds. So that was kind of an unusual situation. So revenues did decrease $6.8 million, but that was due to that transaction, which is by no means a bad thing that we got one-time source of funds, because I believe a lot of that was appropriated to the RC3 project. If you come down to the expenditures, to kind of go over a few of those things. Last year, total expenditures for the general fund was $139 million this year. It was $132 million last year, and the increase in the fiscal year 18 was attributed to increases in salaries and benefits, non-capital hardware, and equipment, as well as capital projects. There was a significant increase in capital projects this year due to finishing up some of the turf and track projects that were ongoing in June 17, as well as the purchase of the RC property, and then the band room was one of the most significant large projects that we had during 18. There's lots of other improvements and stuff like that, but those were the main three. Those are the main things. Like I said, the OPEB liability is obviously the biggest transaction that affected this year. And the way that kind of works is the board pays $800 per month per active employee. And about 20.3% or 20% of that is attributable to retirees' costs. So PHIP takes that money, and about 20% of that they're put into PHIP's trust to fund retirees' health insurance going forward. And then that retirees are continuing to pay their portion once they retire. It comes out of their pension check. So.
And Andrew handled that better than me. I nearly fainted when that number came out. That was much, much larger than we anticipated. And the reason is that PHIP trust is much less funded than the pension trust. So when you look at your pension liability, I don't remember the number, but that PHIP number is about, and this is happening across all the systems we do in Alabama, that's about 80% of that pension liability. I didn't think it would be that high, but you're getting allocated a piece of that overall total liability, that exists, and that's based off your contributions and total to everybody else's contributions. So that's how they're coming up with that allocation of that liability.
When you say that, who's doing that?
Well, it's the PHIP, the actuaries, RSA.
Who are we at the mercy of? Legislature, Department of Education, who says I understand as these costs go up, is it set by code that it's percentage or?
I think all that runs through the
So,
PHIPS board.
if PHIP board, you know the fiasco there in the house, but if the PHIP board decided we're gonna put the burden more on the districts to pay, can they do that?
I'm not sure about.
So we don't know who sets it.
Well, PHIP board sets those, I believe, the rates.
They set the percentage. So the good thing is, like I was saying before, most of the funds are coming from the state. So, you know, unlike a city or, you know, somebody that they just have their own plan specifically for their employees and they're solely responsible for funding that with just the general revenues that they have. Boards have money that's coming from the education trust fund that's gonna then go out, you know, the board's gonna be paying for it, but they're also receiving a portion of the funds for those benefits. So
Since we are so highly locally funded, it exceeds the state, does that cost us more because of that?
More of that liability, you could compute that, whatever your local teacher units are, you could come up with a ratio to go, that's really what we're on the hook for locally for that liability. And ours, I think Alabama's around 15% funded with their insurance trust. A lot of other states are even lower than that, and a few are higher. Nationwide, that's just a very low funding. I think the focus has always been on pensions, but this is out there also, so.
Ms. McKay, does this put a deferred obligation into our budget or is it already there?
As far as the budget goes, I don't
Yeah.
really think.
So we're not earmarking it.
And there's a few other required communications that we need to make, and one of them kind of relates to that. You know, one of the most important things in here is there's some large estimates that go into the calculation of these numbers like this that may ultimately change as time goes on. Obviously, pensions and OPEB is a big estimate that goes into these actuarial calculations. And also too, there's, you know, some estimating that goes on with your fixed asset and useful lives. Those are two of the biggest things. The other things, we didn't have any disagreements with management over any accounting principles, and no, you know, other disagreements related to the audit, and had no other significant findings that we need to report to the board. So those are a few of the big issues. So.
Good job to the department.
It's very good. This is like Andrew said, this is disruptive and getting more so because I always say any finance department, CSFOs, as each year goes by, and I know you've seen this, it seems this gets more voluminous as rules keep rolling forward. So not only do they have to do their daily job, they have to keep up with all this. So I certainly applaud all them with what they have tasked to do. Like I said, just their daily work plus keeping up with this. This will continue to get more complicated too. 2 or 3 years from now, I think they're going to reformat the way they're doing this and do a completely new set of a new presentation to supposedly simplify things, but.
Yeah, simplify, let's see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, ditto to what Ms. Bowman said, hats off to Tina Hancock, to Michelle McKay, and to the entire department. We appreciate everybody's work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a proposal for you all, which is 6.22 that was shared with you during our work session. Board members would ask that you review that. That is the Jamari Terrell Williams Student Bullying Prevention Act. And just ask you over the course of this month, if you'll take a review of that. Please reach out to us if you have questions. We'll ask for your approval at our June board meeting on that act. We also shared with you during our work session the Student Code of Conduct. And knowing that you'll review that and likely have questions, we invite those also, and appreciate Dr. Simmons' work through both the board policy 6.22 and working with Melissa McKee and others on the code of conduct. So we appreciate that. The only thing I wanted to say about work sessions is thank you for allowing us the work session. I think today we had a chance to kind of see what that looked like and how it feels, and we'll tweak it, and we certainly want that to be exceptionally productive time for all of us, and appreciate Michelle and Tara today for taking the lead on that. As I think I've shared with some of you, and perhaps all of you, I'm looking forward to work sessions where we share with you from each of our departments where we are more or less as a baseline. Data, discipline, finances, cultural climate, you name it, we wanna see where we are. And once we are able to look at the baseline data, maybe some predictive analytics about where we expect to be in 3 years, 5 years, but most importantly, what are the strategic steps and the strategic planning that'll help us get there. So I applaud my executive cabinet who's spent lots of time at the table, us talking about how we're gonna look at this data. June 3, they have a great big homework assignment, and they're so excited. But each of them are reaching out to me to say, here are the pieces of the data I think we need to look at in my department, and we're agreeing what that data looks like, and they're now in there researching and pulling. And board members, I say it from this end of it, I don't want us to ever sit here and say, well, I think, I believe, and I suspect. I think you wanna know definitively where are we and show me. And that's what our executive cabinet's wanting to do. And we understand with that, once we understand what the baseline is that there are expectations for us to head northeast in a productive way with our data. And we'll put strategies and benchmarks and progress monitoring, all those pieces in there so that we can track ourselves. I've shared this a little bit with Whit Colvin, our attorney, and we just think this is, I don't want to speak for you, Whit, but we believe this is a substantial way to start to look at ourselves and own where we are. So I have appreciated Whit's chatting with me through that, which brings me to update on strategic planning. That is a live document. It's a reviewed document. It's a piece that is helping us keep pace with our work. And so the work of the executive cabinet, the work sessions we'll share with you, and all of this goes back to our strategic plan. We may come back to you as we look at ourselves with a baseline and say, hey, we missed the mark on a goal or a benchmark, and we'll ask you maybe to revisit and give us feedback about that. So wanted to just share that. Lastly, is Anna with us? I'm sorry, Anna, thank you. Anna's gonna share with you briefly mental health task force accomplishments, and had a chance to be at the table with Anna, and Anna's a wealth of knowledge about mental health, and appreciating her sharing with us tonight.
Thank you. She's not a wealth of knowledge, but now I break this.
Good Judy.
Okay, so like Dr. Murphy said, I just kind of wanted to bring you up to date on our work from last year. And yes, it's been a year-long process, but kind of tell you where we ended things. First of all, I did think it was important that you know how did we reach the decisions that we reached. We just didn't sit around and say, oh, hello, let's do this. The first thing we did is we went across the district and we identified all the prevention, the intervention, and the crisis components that we already had in place. What does Bumpus have? What does Rocky Ridge have? What does Hoover High School? And then we put that all together. We surveyed our teachers, our counselors, and administrators to identify specific needs in the area of mental health. Dr. Lowry was on the survey committee, so he helped us do that. Then we took that information and we analyzed and compared our identified needs to the programs and resources of what we had. And what we found was one school may have something that another school said we needed. So it was as simple as saying, well, look, it's over here, let's pair it over here. Then we identified what we were missing. We prioritized those needs, and then we had a group, an individualized committee, that went out and researched the best practice that they could find in regard to addressing those needs, whether it was from a district from California or what we're doing down the road or over in Homewood. So that's kind of how the committee worked. Our outcomes for this year, we partnered with Impact Family Counseling, and we offer a family strengthening program for students in grades 6 through 12. It's for a parent and a guardian. And it's a rotating program where you can come at any time. I think it's a 6-week program. They meet once a week It's free to our families. They meet over at Simmons this year. And it replaces what we used to know as Bridges and Middle Ground. It's been a great partnership, and in fact, we're looking at the results. We ran 3 sessions this year, 3 separate sessions. And I haven't seen all of it, but I printed this off real quick. A couple of the comments from parents truly enjoyed this, very helpful. The program has given me hope again. Before I felt defeated and unheard. Now I know that my voice matters, and it's all about learning to communicate with your student, with your child. And a couple of the team comments were, I had a very fun time here and I hate to leave. So this was excellent. So after school, that's not bad. Thanks to Dr. Deborah Smith, we obtained a grant to implement a research evidence-based, that's a mouthful, social emotional curriculum across the districts. It will be grades K through 5. There is an assessment component with that, and our committee decided we're going to track the second graders because that's a group that we can track year after year for a little while. We were hoping to get it implemented this year, but the grant funding did not arrive in time. So full implementation, which will really be better, will start at the beginning of next school year. And so that will be in all elementary schools across the board. We prioritize the employment of 2 board-certified behavior analysts, which you guys approved, and thank you very much. We have those, and they've been very helpful. We created an instructional support behavioral team to support behaviors and issues of students in the special education referral process or who have a 504 or an IEP. We implemented the Be Kind Pink Shirt Day initiative, which is all about prevention because we know a culture of kindness helps everything in the classroom. So it was the 2nd year this year. Then we started suicide prevention and awareness at the high school level. This year was the 2nd year. And our goal for next year is to, are the middle school principals here? Is to start having this conversation at the middle school level because it is so important. And I know that's a little tightrope to walk, but we've really got to start getting down to younger kids to have those discussions. And then lastly, we created a prevention intervention and resource electronic binder for counselors and administrators to continually be able to outsource, whether it's a resource for mental health, United Way, whatever resources they need, they're all in that binder, and we update it on a continual basis. And so that's where we left things. Under construction is the creation of a students assistance team on the district level to look at those issues that we can't quite solve on our own, to pull like a multidisciplinary team together for problem solving for student needs. So we haven't rolled this out, basic mental health training for all Hoover City Schools employed. The identification of a universal mental health screener is on our radar. The incorporation of See Something, Say Something, which is what Dr. Murphy had hit so hard on in the safety week and then seeing the Sandy Hook. Then we have discussed incorporating that into our suicide prevention and our Be Kind week and try to get it out in the fall and in the spring. Hoover Rise, of course. And then the other impact program that they offer for us to run is a positive opportunities substance abuse training for grades 8 through 12. So we're looking at maybe do we have families that might be interested in doing that? We can partner with them for no cost at that. Lastly, this is just a list of our team members that participated in this task force. It was all something that they added to their plate of responsibilities. So I'd just like to say, if any of y'all are here, will you stand up because y'all did good work. Bob,
Yes, ma'am.
take a shot. Mr. Smith, call you out. Thank y'all for your input and what you've done. So, any questions?
I think one of the things we realize, and I just started scribbling here, Tara and I had this conversation today, there's lots of training we need to have. Not only have we talked about having the diversity training, almost in lieu of, if you will, our Teacher Institute and visiting RC3, but the whole suicide awareness. I had a teacher the other day sort of challenged me and said, how do we recognize child abuse? Because it's not always because a kid walked in with a bruise on him or her. And so how do we help our teachers understand what child abuse looks like other than bruising, the whole bullying thing, which we've talked about, mental health, substance abuse training. How do we see these things earlier rather than later, and how do we address them in appropriate ways? So there's just lots of good professional development and investment of energies that we need to make in terms of some of this training. So we look forward to it. Lots of learning for us.
If I could leave y'all with last thing, one of the things that I learned from serving on this committee is when we started this conversation, and went through the conversation over the course of the year, the term that no one wanted to use was mental health. And it has such a negative connotation. Oh, no, don't use, we can't say mental health. And here's the thing that I'm gonna encourage all of us to do. You have to call it what it is. It's called mental health. The reason that it has a negative connotation is we let it. I mean, we ourselves, can't use that word. So I think that the professionals who deal in mental health, and we have so much of it facing us in education, I think we have to use the correct terminology. There's, it will have a negative connotation if we give it to it, but if we don't, it will be positive things. So that's a lesson I learned. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate that. Certainly.
Some good news. In the legislature today, I got a call from David Wheeler, one of our House reps. Senate Bill 176 passed the House. It's on to the governor. That's the ad valorem increase that we've been seeking. So at this point, it will go to Governor Ivey, hopefully signs it. And at that point, the Hoover City Council, city government will be able to go to you, the voters, to ask if we can ask for a millage increase in Hoover. So this has been a long process. I want to thank our delegation. It was sponsored by Senator Wagner. Both sides had to vote in support on this, and the community supported too. But just to reinforce, there's no tax increasing right now. It's just going to give the people the authority to vote at a predetermined time by the council to hopefully get this millage increase. So that's a success. If this goes through, this puts us at the lid cap of 75 mills. Just to give you an idea of Vestavia, Homewood, they hover around 100 mills. So I'm not saying we need to continue to go up, just get you a perspective of where we are. We're very fortunate that the citizens here are very willing to share lower property taxes with our schools. So that's some good news for tonight.
And certainly in advance of any sort of election, we will talk about what do we need and why do we need and what does that impact on our students. So we realize before us there's a lot of work to be done to talk about all that. We look forward to that too. So thank you. Board, next you have item 8, which is the election. This is the time of the year for election of a board president and a vice president. And so I'll defer to you to conduct that, or I will ask for a motion, or you advise me.
You can certainly go through it. Mr. Tobin, you want to advise on this?
Typically what would happen is it would be an agenda item that would be announced, and you would actually pass it to Dr. Murphy to preside over elections, since you'll elect from among the board members.
So we need a vote just to do this, or we're to that point now?
Now, you're at that point now, so Dr. Murphy can just begin the
So
process.
board members, I'll open it up for a nomination for president of our board.
I would like to nominate Craig Kelly.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there other nominations for president for our board? We have a motion, we have a second. All board members who are in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hear no objections. Congratulations. And next to the vice president of our board, open that for your nominations.
I'll nominate Deanna Ballman.
Ms. Bowman, is there a second? Second. Any other nominations? I have a motion and a second. All board members in favor? With aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations to both of you. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you for the responsibility. I'll say this, and then been here, I guess I'm the oldest in two different ways. I've been on the board around everybody, and I'm the oldest too, I'm sure. It's a pleasure to do this, but I will say that any one of these board members could step forward and run this board. You know, my position is just one, and so we're here as a quorum. And I hope the staff and people notice that we follow the Open Meetings Act. It's a law and we try to follow it. It's difficult sometimes, but very fortunate to have the board that I serve with, and I truly mean it when I say any one of you can step forward and assume this position. So thank you for the responsibility.
Next dates for our board meeting, we have a special call board meeting. A special call board meeting for May 22 at 7:30 a.m. And this is typical special call board meeting this time of the year for us to address any last personnel matters. And so just a reminder, I hope we can keep that meeting on our schedule.
Go ahead, and then I'll talk.
Yeah, and I think we probably have a conflict with our June board meeting. June the 11th is our regular scheduled Tuesday evening meeting in June, and I think there are some conflicts or a conflict or.
So something else was just brought to my attention. So on May 22nd, since we will be heading to graduation that evening in State Park, could we do that board meeting just before leaving the central office?
It's a much better idea.
That was actually Ms. Tosney's idea.
You get a smiley face sticker, Ms.
Yes,
Todd.
you do.
I've been trying so hard.
And then for June 11th, I know a few of us are heading down to Orange Beach for ASB and will not be here on June 11th. So I propose that we change that date to June 4th, which will just be 1 week before on a Tuesday. Does that work for everyone?
June 4th rather than June the 11th, just move it a week early.
Good for me.
Does that
Yeah,
work?
that's fine for me.
Given that's a change, I think the safe thing is, given that that's a change in our regular scheduled board meeting and you approve the schedule, I would suggest that we have a motion in a second and just make that completely official.
We have a motion to accept the adjusted meeting schedule. Second,
Second.
all in favor? Yes, sir, questions?
We need a time for May 22nd. What time is
We
graduation?
would need to leave,
So theirs is at 5.
so that's on the 22nd, yes, so Spain Park, 5 o'clock graduation, so we would need to leave this building, given traffic and getting down there, not later than 4, maybe even announce before, but
3:45.
yeah.
How long, this board meeting's one of the
It's
10,
one of those
15
where we
minutes.
give you a personnel report, you've had an opportunity to review it before that particular event, and we'll be asking your approval.
3:30.
15 minutes, Mary?
At the max.
Yeah. So have a 3:30 board meeting, and as soon as that's over, we load them up. Get at it. Okay. So we'll, May 22 at 3:40.
Just as a reminder, there was a motion, never mind, I'm sorry, pass.
3:30. 3:30 on May 22nd. And then we changed June 11 to the week prior. We just lost that day. The 4th.
So would we do a work session on the newly minted June 4th meeting?
I would like to do so if that's possible.
I just wanted.
4:30 work session, 5:30 regular scheduled board meeting, although we adjusted the time, the date and time, or day.
If
recommend that you approve that.
Okay. Since we added the time, do we need to do another motion?
The motion, I do have a motion to accept the adjusted time.
So,
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
All right, thank you.
Board members, we do have a reason to go into executive session, and our attorney is with us. And I will propose to you that there are two reasons for us to go into executive session for purposes of discussing too, but discussing a matter of possible good name and character and also pending litigation. And if I could, Mr. Colvin, if you'd confirm that for us.
I'll certify for the minutes that that is an appropriate reason for executive session and that the executive session contemplates discussing pending litigation.
The motion, the motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved.
The second? All in favor?
Aye.
My guess is this is gonna be an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. 90 minutes is what we think. We will not make a decision back there. We will not return out here, I apologize, out here and make any decision that should be in front of the public. So this will be simply executive session. We'll come back out and have the time to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.